Another one of the reasons is because of who we have as leadership. When you can trust the people you're following, when you can know that they are living their truth, there's a whole new energy that takes place in both ministry and outside of it, in life as a whole. And so it is my joy, my pleasure, my privilege to introduce Bishop, but not Chief, living luminary Ken Gordon.
Technology. Oh my gosh, now the cat's out of the bag. The Fellowship for Affirming Ministries made me a Pentecostal bishop, so yeah, right. And the joke really goes that at the same time Michael Beckwith was made one, but Michael Beckwith was a chief before that. He was made a chief somewhere along the line, so he always tells me he's Chief Bishop, Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, and I'm just Bishop. It is so wonderful to be back here again. It's been a couple years, I think. And you guys, who are you? That point of light. Wow. I'll tell you. You got to put that in a bottle or bring it to one of our conferences. That would be nice, yeah. I'll tell you. Do you know more than just one song? Two. Wow. Wow. I was verklempt, and I didn't know I was going to jump right up and speak, so I still have tears in my eyes about it. That's spectacular. I love doing what I do. I travel around North America and the world, actually, supporting Science of Mind, putting it forward. I'm the spiritual leader of the overall organization, and that means basically that I get coddled everywhere I go. And I do like it. And March 1st is my last day, or actually February 28th, or if it's 29, it's a leap year. But it's the last day that I have as this particular role I've timed out. And I've retired from my pulpit as well. So I'm entering into a new phase of being and a new phase of life, which is wonderful. It's not like I haven't done it before, so I'm looking forward to it in some way. In other ways, I don't know. I'm going to miss coming and visiting all the churches, although I'll still be available. I was thinking of getting a card made up saying minister for rent and, just handing it out. But anyway, our topic today is really, I love my family, and it's really about seeing the wholeness of the oneness of everybody. And our theme has been this month about cherish the human family, and that's really what I want to talk about. You know, the game is afoot. Have you felt that there's transformation, there's change that's taking place, and that it's happening everywhere, and it's happening all kinds of ways. And so, why would you be different with your new property swap that's coming up, and how spectacular will that be? That's going to be absolutely sensational, trust me. Only goodness is going to come from it. Just like only goodness will come from the fires in Santa Rosa, and only goodness comes from everything that happens and occurs, given enough time. It's the evolution of the consciousness of who we are. It's the expansion and the growth and the development. It's us returning back to our true nature, which is the divine nature, the individualization of spirit itself. It's us being able to expand into that particular area and that era. And it's been happening ever since humankind arrived on this planet. And believe me, it's been happening before that. It's been happening since the Big Bang. Things change. And they change for the good. And we have to go through the transitional periods in order to arrive at the goodness on the other side. It's just the nature of it. I think back to my grandfather's age and era, and that was an age and era of huge change that went on in the world then, when we began to develop and grow out of some of the consciousness that existed at that time. And my great-grandfather, who was really of the colonial consciousness. He was of the consciousness of that existed prior to the consciousness we're in right now. And we're kind of going through this phase or this step that's taking us from that old consciousness of generations ago, and it's arriving and delivering us at a new consciousness. And the new consciousness is one that I believe is going to be more accepting, it's going to be more open, it's going to be more refreshing, and it's going to be of a higher level than the consciousness we left behind us. We're only 4 generations out of tribal consciousness, if you actually think about it. So we've moved fairly quickly. We're not moving fast enough, according to some, but we've moved fairly quickly. And the change has never been a good thing. It's never been a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's going to happen. Change is going to take place, and it's up to us to determine or decide how easily we're going to move with it or float with it. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, said that he believed that the purpose of life was the emancipation from discord of all kinds, and it was sure to be attained by all. If that isn't a world that works for all, I don't know what is. And that is that expansion, that expansiveness that pulls us towards it, and we will change. We will transform. Generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, eventually arriving back where we came from, which is the spiritual consciousness, the divine consciousness that is the truth of who we are, that which resides within us. And we do it by releasing fear. I shall fear no more because I know that I am a child of God. We shall fear no more when we awaken to the reality and the realization that what we are is we're connected to Source more than anything else, and so is everything else. So that when we look upon another human being, what we're doing is we're looking at ourselves, a reflection in a mirror, and that we're looking at the truth of our own being, the truth of our own life, and the truth of our own source. And unfortunately, what we have to do, or what is required in order to be able to see that, is to cut through a lot of the neuroses and a lot of the mitote and a lot of the minutia that comes up in our lives. These things that prevent us or keep us from moving forward. One of our ministers, Reverend Rafe Ellis, out of Grass Valley, he said that we used to believe in the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I speak totally for myself, not for you. But if I did unto others as I did unto myself, the others would be in a lot of trouble. So he said that we have to graduate to the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they want to be done unto. What a concept, huh? Dale Carnegie, as a matter of fact, one of my favorite quotes of the month was Dale Carnegie saying that he loves strawberries and cream. But when he goes fishing, for some reason he knows the fish don't like strawberries and cream. So he uses a worm for the fish, which is exactly what we're dealing with in our society and how we deal with it and how we work with it as we grow through it. And like I said, it's neither good nor bad, it's just is happening. We're learning how to step out of that reptilian consciousness that each and every one of us has, and we're learning to step into a new form of consciousness, a new form of being. And because we're only 4 generations adrift from tribal consciousness, we're only really 3 generations moving to suspend colonial consciousness. I read a sociologist report once, and it was just recently, as a matter of fact, and what the sociologist said was the issue with colonial consciousness, which we had for generations prior to coming in here, that's the consciousness of empire building. That's the consciousness of moving into another country and shoving it aside and utilizing and using the people and the resources for the benefit of whoever happens to be the strongest at that given time. Everybody understand what colonial consciousness is? He said the problem with colonial consciousness is that we never got rid of it. And so what happened in our day and age that we're moving into it right now is we've run out of countries to abuse and manipulate and take care of. So we're beginning to abuse and manipulate each other as we move forward into it. And once again, that's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a development. It's a growth thing. We're on the verge of something spectacular happening. William Meader from the used to be head of the Theosophical Society, and I shared this with the practitioner group. He said that nowadays the candle and the light is burning so brightly, it's brighter than it's ever been before. And when the candle grows, the shadow expands. And our job really is to deal with the shadow and how it works. And the dealing with that comes from our own inner knowing, to be able to understand that we are unified with everyone, and that there is no separation or difference on the larger scale in the mind of God, in the capital C scale. And so we can look at that and we can step into it and we can say, wow, this is spectacular. Or we can instead look at it and say, over my dead body, am I going to move that way? You know, that's not right. And why? Because we're fearful of what's going to happen and what's going to take place if we do. And it's not about right or wrong. It's about the natural evolution of life and the natural evolution of consciousness. And we're coming into a time in our life where we're conscious and aware enough to know, when we actually sit down and think about it and bring the awakening and the awareness into our being, we actually know what we resonate with according to our authentic being, and we all resonate with the same thing, which is the peace and the harmony and the joy and the love and the sharing and the fulfillment and the productivity and the prosperity and the abundance, etc., 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 etc. But somehow or other we think, oh gosh, it can't happen for everybody, there isn't enough to go around, or whatever other thought we might have. And so what we do is we project our feelings into situations and onto people that don't belong, that don't own that. We project it out to them, and we make them villains, and we demonize, and we utilize things. We use all the traditional old stuff that we've used from the beginning of time to protect ourselves, sustain ourselves, and keep ourselves alive. I'll tell you a story. I told it years ago. I love my family. I grew up in a family that I never went a day without knowing I was loved. It was one of the greatest blessings I'd ever had in my life. And I had an older sister. She was 2.5 years older than me. And this familial story, I don't know if it's true because I was too young, but the familial story was that I never even spoke until I was 4 years old because my sister Colleen always spoke for me. I never had to ask for anything. I'd just stand there and Colleen would say to my mom, "Ken wants," and I would get it, right? So, I mean, she always cared for me and looked after me. She passed on a couple of years ago, but she always took care of me. Even when I was an adult, even when I was a minister, even when I was spiritual leader of this organization, she was there to take care of me. She was there to support me and there to hold me up. And so I loved and adored her, totally and absolutely. When I was about 15 and she was 16, she determined that she wanted to go on a paddling canoe trip. And so she said, she came home one day, very rare for a 17-year-old or whatever to come to their 14, 15-year-old brother and say, "Will you go on a trip with me for 12 days in a canoe?" And so I should have known something was up. And I said, "Sure, I'd love to." So we packed up our canoe and my dad's old Pontiac and strapped it to the roof, and we drove about 400 miles north into the Caribou country of British Columbia. And the Caribou country in British Columbia is a gorgeous high area. It's not unlike Prescott as far as elevation goes. It's in the 5,000 foot level. And so we got up there, and we went to a group of lakes called the Bowen Lakes. And the Bowen Lakes is about 100 kilometers in a rectangle. You come in on one lake, or you portage in on one lake. You go to the end of that lake. You portage over to another lake. You go another lake. Then you portage into another lake. Then you follow that lake through to a river. Then you get on the river. You go down the river. Then what you do is you come out at the other end of the river and you portage into another lake. Then you portage into another lake. Then you portage into another lake. Are you getting the drift of why my sister wanted me to come along? That and the fact that she was chasing a couple of boys who were in front of us. And so the first couple of days we really had to work to catch up with them. Although, I got to be honest with you, I didn't know we were chasing the boys. She didn't bother to tell me until, oh, look, there's my friends. So it was interesting. I think one of them ended up becoming my brother-in-law. But So we did this trip, and it really was an exciting and a good trip. And it was fun. And we weren't very good in the canoe. As a matter of fact, it was brand new. But I actually was at the stern of the boat, so I learned to J-stroke very quickly and to side sweep and all the good things that you learn to do in a canoe. And so we took off, and we took all of our gear for 12 days, packed it all up, and I portaged 4 or 5 times with my sister nattering at me all the way about how I could carry more and push more and work harder. And so that part wasn't overly enjoyable. But we did, and we took off. And at one particular point, we came into a lake called Isaac Lake. And when we came into Isaac Lake is a long, beautiful lake. And you've got to know how pristine this property is. You have to have an appointment to get into it. You need to reserve a spot. They allow no power boats whatsoever, and it's all done by paddle or sail nowadays. But you get into it, and the water is crystal clear. You can see down 40, 50, 60 feet, and you can see the trout swimming at the bottom. There are areas, wildlife all over the place. Every day you run into something fresh and something new that is living there in the wild. It's just a spectacular place. It's a national park or provincial park, and it's open to anyone, but you need the reservation. But at one particular point, about 4 or 5 days out, we came to the end of a lake called Isaac Lake, and that's where you had to go down the Isaac River, and the Isaac River ended up in the Caribou River, and the Caribou River ended up in another lake after that. It was one of the few places you really didn't have to portage, providing you knew how to canoe. Because the Isaac River was an interesting river. So we were smart enough and scared enough to actually go and scope it out before we bothered to put our canoe into it. And so I can remember we went and we looked at this river, and it was a nice river. It looked really sweet, looked like it was doable, but we decided we were going to portage all our gear in and leave it on the other side and then take the boat through the river just for the kick of it and the fact that I didn't want to carry the boat. So we got there, and we were up on the top of the hill, and we were overlooking the entire span of the river where we needed to go. And the river came out, and it came down a beautiful, slow-moving, deep current of water, and then it turned abruptly to the left. And when it turned abruptly to the left, it dropped down into a little chute. And you went down the chute, and then there was a little pocket, a little hole, which was about twice the size of this stage. And you had to turn the canoe directly to the right from that point, and then you went into some whitewater rapids. And at the end of the whitewater rapids, it spilled into this magnificent little pond that had trees overhanging it and lily pads, and it was just so serene and beautiful. You couldn't help but want to take a boat into it. And then that little pond kind of rolled off into a 40-foot waterfall that went down to the next segment of the river. And so Colleen and I went, we looked at it, we checked it out, we thought, this is going to be fun, we can do this, we can handle this. And the guide up front, the gentleman who was helping us out, took a look at it, and he said, okay, well, the only tough part of this canoe trip is when you hit the white water. And he said, whatever you do when you hit the white water, go either on the left bank or go on the right bank, but whatever you do not go down the middle. Because the middle was one of these roller coaster things that goes like this, and the left bank was fairly calm, and the right bank was fairly calm in comparison. But the middle was just this boiling rapid of roller coaster that went all the way down. So my sister and I, we get in the boat, and we portage everything over, and we get the boat out, and it's our turn, and the 2 boys she were chasing were standing on the top of the knoll to watch us, and everything, we had a crowd. It was great, an audience, and we get into the boat, and we take off. And I'll tell you, coming down that first calm and easy deep water, it was just heavenly. A couple of strokes, the water kept you going. It was great. Come to the left-hand turn, And no problem, because you're coming out of this nice broad area. All you got to do is just work together and the boat just turns. And you hit the chute and you go down the chute. And we're rushing down the chute and you get going really, really fast. And then you hit this little pond or pool twice the size of the stage. And when you hit it, you have to turn real sharp. Down one way we went, took the turn like a pro going into the chute. Whipped down the chute, no problem whatsoever. Hit the little bottom where the pond is, and the boat tipped. Not over, just tipped. Tipped enough to put the water up to my waist at the back. And my sister was up there, and we were headed for the rapids. And I remember I got in it, and I'm sitting there, and we managed to get the boat back righted again, you know. We're ready to go. We're ready to go. I'm sure we are. It's a little awkward because she really can't hit the water with her paddle, but we're ready to go. And it was go down the right bank or go down the left bank. Don't go down the middle. And we come out and we hit it, but as soon as we hit and I spilled a bit, my sister suddenly became something out of, I don't know, The Exorcist? She turned totally around in her seat and was sitting backwards looking at me. And she's sitting backwards looking at me, and she's got her paddle up like this. And she says, "Can you idiot?" And she tries to hit me with the paddle. Now, I'm not the sanest person in the world, but I know you go down the right bank, you go down the left bank, don't go down the middle. Because you're not going to live if you go down the middle, is the way I'm thinking. So I've got my own fear going that's really keeping me moving. And so I say, "Colleen, for Christ's sakes, paddle." I should have said Rajneesh because I don't use that term anymore, but I do now. Okay, so I said, "For heaven's sakes, go down the paddle, paddle, paddle." And instead what she did was she started to try to swipe and hit me with the paddle. And so I literally was going stroke, duck, stroke, duck, stroke, duck, and the paddle's whizzing over top of my head. And she's just I can't hear what she's saying because there's this crescendo of noise that comes from the rapids. And go down the right, go down the left, but don't go down the middle. We went down the middle. And so we're hauling down the middle of this thing, and I'm just trying to keep the boat upright. That's all I'm trying to do. Letting the water carry me, trying not to I don't even know what I was trying to do. You know, it was like driving a car. I wasn't even thinking about it. I just was trying to stay alive. And all the time, my sister's trying to hit me with the paddle. I love my sister. She loves me. We've spent a lifetime together. We've been like this the whole time. It has been a magnificent relationship. She's trying to kill me with the paddle. Well, and I'm screaming, "Paddle! We're going to capsize. We're going to die. Paddle!" Now, all the way down, she tried to swing that paddle at me, blazing away at me, until we spilled out into that beautiful lagoon, which had the overhanging trees and the water lilies. And we slid out, and everything went quiet. And we slid across the water. Oh, it was sweet to be there. And then we hit a moose. I swear to God, this is a true story. We bump into the rear end of this great big moose who was chomping away on lily pads. And the moose looks up, gives a snort like you wouldn't believe, and takes off running for the shore. And as the moose runs to the shore, you ever seen a moose run on water? You ever seen a tugboat go through a water? You see the wake? It's like a boat going through. And the moose takes off, and the boat goes and starts going towards the 40-foot waterfall. My sister, by that time, had turned around, and we paddled like crazy for the shore. I'll digress and take a little sideline. When we got to the shore, even though we were 250 miles from anywhere, and there were no trails, I picked up my pack and said, "I'm going home. Goodbye." And suddenly she became contrite and my loving sister again. "Oh, please don't go home. No, you can't. Don't be silly. You'll get lost in the woods." "I don't care. I'm lost here. I'm going home." I stayed. Back to the story. I love my sister. Seriously, I still do. It does funny things to us. It really does. You know, I don't know whether or not any of you have ever had conflict in your life. But I will tell you something. 9 times out of 10, the conflict isn't what you think it's about. The problem isn't the problem. The problem in our life and with our loving the family isn't the fact that we have inadequacy of love. The problem isn't that we even aren't compassionate. The problem is that we get frightened. And when we get frightened, our old consciousness demands that we do something, and the old training that came from this consciousness that we're in the process right now of graduating from demands that we need to take it out on something or someone other than ourselves. And what is occurring in our loving family of the world, the purpose of all life is complete emancipation from all discord, and it's sure to be attained by all. What happens is when we get frightened, we begin to look for villains. And all that does is slow down the evolution of our consciousness and slow down our ability to be able to be in contact and feel the love that we have for one another. What it does is it rips us apart from the commonality that we have, the truth that we have, the things that we want alike, not apart. And it's not about, it doesn't have to be about gender. It doesn't have to be about color. It's not about politics. It's not about liberals or conservatives or Republicans and Democrats. It's not about anything other than fear. And when we as human beings decide and determine that the love is more important than the fear and the vindication, what will happen is we'll have a healing and a transformational healing, and it'll heal the world. It will heal the world. Now, it's evolution. We forgive ourselves because we still retain and maintain that reptilian brain. It still exists within us. As much as we would like to say it doesn't, it still does. And what we do is we react in strange fashions and strange manners when we allow it to control us. But like Marcia Sutton says, awareness is curative. So when we are aware of the circumstance, when we are aware of the situation, and we sit back and we do our work and we actually consider it and work it out and let the pathway take us where it needs to take us, what we do is we awaken to a realization that what we're frightened of isn't worth being frightened of because it's not really what the issue is. And then what we get to do is surrender to the flow and allow it to take us without the conflict and without the battle. Am I making sense? We're in such a time as that now. And it's up to us as cutting-edge metaphysicians. It's up to us to see the clarity and the truth, and to the best of our ability, live from it and model it in all that we do. And to the best of our ability, forgive ourselves when we don't, but remember to start doing it again. And not give up on it all the time and say, humbug, enough. I can't do this anymore. That's what my family does. And you are my family of choice. My parents are gone, my sister is gone. I still love my other nuclear family. But I will tell you, I've been 32 years in this teaching, and the people I love the most are sitting in the seats right here and sitting in the seats in churches all over the world. Because they're like-minded people. And we get together and we argue back and forth and fight back and forth, which I really don't understand because there's so few of us. But we get together and do it anyway. But the truth is that love is what holds us together and binds us together. And the realization that this thing called the evolution of consciousness must take place. And it will take place with us or without us. It will drag us through cheesecloth to have us. So you better be prepared. or you can surrender and allow yourself to flow with it. So I bless you, I honor you, I hold you as sacred. Please know you're loved. Thank you.
You want to do the prayer?
Would you like to pray?
Why, yes.
You going to tinkle for me? Don't you try to hit me with your paddle. Okay. So let's come together in that consciousness that we're never separate from. Recognizing and knowing that when our belief in God is greater than our belief in the condition, a healing occurs. And I speak my word today for this congregation specifically. I speak my word for every person who is here and every person who is not here, who is within the range of this consciousness as I talk. I recognize and know that there is a divine light that is shining upon CSL Prescott. That it is a light that is enabling the evolution and the expansion of this teaching in this community to a degree that awakens humanity to its spiritual magnificence and aids in the creation of the world that works for everyone. I speak my word recognizing and knowing that everything that occurs from this moment forward is a divine occurrence to manifest and bring into experience, expression, and existence that which we choose to have. So I know that this community is a loving community. I know that this community is an expanding community. I know that this community is a wealthy community. I know that this community is a loving community. And every single thing that occurs from this moment forward draws us and attracts us to that truth, no matter what it appears like. I therefore speak my word knowing that every swap, every deal, everything that exists within this building, everything that exists within the feeling sense of the humanity that's in front of me, everything that exists within the causal reaches of the universe itself, conspires and works together the goodness into life and the goodness into this center. I give thanks for Reverend Kathleen. I give thanks for the staff. I give thanks for you. I give thanks for the practitioners. And I give thanks to God. I surrender this back to the universal mind, knowing it is already complete. It is already done. And together we ground this by saying, and so it is. Thank you, God.